So we're going to transition now from business to jobs, jobs, and more jobs. The fact of the matter is the unemployment rate is decreasing. However, there's an underemployment rate that people aren't recognizing, and those are people who stop applying for the jobs. Now, we're looking at these HISD students. You're going to be looking for jobs real soon. You're going to be looking at college. The reality is there's a ticking time bomb in our economic system that very few people are paying attention to that is going to impact black people disproportionately, and that's called automation. The automation of jobs where you can go to Walmart and Sam's and check out without going to a cashier, or you can go to the bank and do your deposit and everything without dealing with an individual. 1 out of 3 of those jobs is African American. What policies are you addressing or putting into place to address this time bomb that is already underway?
Yeah, let me just go back briefly, because you made me think about something with our Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. We literally did just put in a few $1 million for it's called the Northwest Side Community Development Corporation in the city of Milwaukee that's specifically targeted to certain neighborhoods. I don't know why that slipped my mind. We've just been doing a whole lot. But
so you are making progress.
We did. And I'm glad you mentioned your Economic Development Corporation, because that was one of the big frustrations, is that there was a map that showed where investments were going, and the bulk of money was literally in Republican legislative districts and nowhere in urban areas. So let me clarify. I had to clarify that there were several $1 million we put into this for new business startups for minority and women-owned businesses.
Thank you for that. Now address the time bomb.
Now let's get to the time bomb. And there are a couple things too with that: income inequality, climate change, and automation. And automation isn't something new. We've already experienced automation and the impact of automation and what that's had on manufacturing communities. My family, my granddad moved up to Milwaukee from Tallulah, Louisiana. And when he moved to Milwaukee, it was because of the jobs. He worked at a plant. It was called A.O. Smith. It was a big manufacturing facility. Employed the whole community. And then jobs, some went overseas, but a lot of it was lost to automation. And this is something that we have been dealing with for generations. And it didn't just take the jobs, it took the whole community with it. There was no wealth left. These were communities of homeowners who, people who were able to go to work, earn a living wage, have health care, vacation time, were able to retire comfortably. But that's not the reality anymore for people my age. And these were jobs for folks that didn't even graduate college or didn't even go to college, went straight into the workforce after high school. Like if you end up getting somebody pregnant as a younger person or under the age of 20, it was fine. You go get a job at A.O. Smith. You would be able to take care of the family. But we lost all that when we lost places like A.O. Smith.
So get to what policy?
And these companies, these companies still exist. First, let me make that very, very clear too. And it's more about concentration of wealth and making services easier for these businesses. Our policy, making sure also artificial intelligence. I think that's the big piece of it too.
What was it again?
Artificial intelligence. Automation has been here, but the artificial intelligence piece is the thing we really, really, really need to be concerned about and really need to think about, addressing this.
Break that down for the audience. When you
artificial intelligence, like
not
you
just what it is, but how it relates to the automation.
I think you hit on it perfectly when you talked about self-checkout. I encourage everybody to not use self-checkout. Use a teller if you see one. Do not use self-checkout. That's like you are taking away jobs from young folks and people who really need those jobs. I try my best, even if I see the line is longer and there's nobody in the self-checkout.
I got to keep you on track.
We
go
do
back
it.
to artificial intelligence.
I can go off on a tangent sometimes. You got me out here about the artificial intelligence. But in a nutshell, artificial intelligence is computers performing human tasks. And we have to think about the jobs of tomorrow, right? Look at where the growth is. Renewable energy, that's where job growth has happened all across the country. And it was like in 2017, like a 25% growth in the solar industry, 17% growth in the wind industry. This is where jobs are happening. A lot of these are installation jobs. A lot of these are manufacturing jobs and jobs that can't be replaced by artificial intelligence.
Is your role providing any policies for training in those areas?
Our technical college system is the best bet for those jobs. We talk about, obviously the need to support K-12 education, the need to support our university system. Our technical college systems at least across Wisconsin, don't get the love that they deserve. I think that's probably the same across the country. I talked to so many, presidents of these two-year institutions and instructors, and students don't always get the exposure to those jobs either. They don't always know that that's a possibility. And some who would be more than interested and willing in pursuing technical education, a lot of times it's parents who say, I want my son or my daughter to go to college. And if you're a parent in the audience, I want you to open up your mind, because some of these opportunities are more lucrative than jobs that come from a four-year degree.
Are there policies, Governor, that are being implemented? And I know Wisconsin, you've already described what kind of environment you're working in. But even as it relates to the other, Governor Oliver and Commissioner Ellis, are there policies that you're implementing to address this automation monster that is gobbling up people? And if they are not trained or retrained, the doors of opportunity are closed.
Yep.
So
the only policy is education. The only policy is education, is making sure that people are trained to participate in this brand new economy that we're witnessing, or that we're being a part of. Like, we are right in the middle of it.
Okay, well, let's see what some of your other colleagues are doing.
I'm so glad too that we have so many young people here, because often, I'm a baby boomer, I claim it. And these young people have grown up in a technological and an innovative environment. A lot of times, those of us who are policymakers are not on top of the technical skills these young people already have. So in New Jersey, we invested heavily in vocational education. You can go to the local vocational school in New Jersey. You can learn robotics. You can artificial intelligence. I had to chuckle. I have a friend with a 1.5-year-old daughter, and she goes through the house all day saying, "Hey Google, hey Google," calling Alexa and Google. She's 1.5 years old. So I think that the young people today are going to be able to better visualize what future work opportunities are available for them. They are developing apps that they use. A lot of young kids, 16, 17, 18. In New Jersey, we focus on the innovation economy. We have brought a European company, solar company, to house themselves in Atlantic City. There's an opportunity to build wind farms off the coast of Atlantic City. We're doing that. We also are merging eds and meds. I think the state that did that best was Massachusetts, with all the pharmaceutical companies there and the higher ed institutions. Biomedicine, we are trying to gear young people into careers in biomedicine, the healthcare industry. And we have financed and funded initiatives to help students do that. And then, with the whole college thing, and those get to be individual, decisions that are made, but I think everyone now recognizes you can be successful in this country without a college education, but you have to have another kind of education. And I think that a lot of our states are promoting that as well. Also, the liberal arts colleges aren't liberal arts colleges anymore. They are really going into teaching young people skills for the future. So I think we are on it. The challenge for all of us is to encourage some of those companies to locate in our state. And Texas, you've been doing that for decades, but a lot of the other states around the country have not. New Jersey's an older industrial state. We also have an agricultural industry in our state, but we must redefine our economy in New Jersey, and we know it's through innovation and science.
I stand with my commissioner for Global Witness in Ministry as the president of the Women's Missionary Society of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. My senior bishop is here, Bishop Adam J. Richardson. Other bishops are present, supervisors are present, and missionaries are present. I am here to introduce Michael Bloomberg, a very accomplished businessman, an author, a philanthropist, former mayor, a strong advocate for change and equality, and a 2020 candidate in the primaries for the President of the United States of America. I can truly say that he has put his money where his mouth is. And although some say that he has started the race too late, the Bible says that the race is not given to the swift, but to those that endure. And it is not how you start, but how you finish. I present Michael Bloomberg, the 2020 candidate for President of the United States of America.
Deborah, thank you. I'm going to incorporate your biblical remarks into my next speech. But I appreciate the fact that you just gave the introduction exactly the way I wrote it. Seriously, it's great to be back here in Houston. I was just here over the holidays when I went to the Church Without Walls with Mayor Turner, your great mayor. And when I was mayor of New York City, I spent most Sundays in black churches, just as I thought I would growing up as a nice Jewish boy in Boston. I just wish synagogue services were as lively as the church services I went to. My AME church of choice back then was a church in Queens, the New York Greater Allen AME Church. It was named for your legendary founder, Reverend Allen, and led by my friend, Reverend Floyd Flake. And I spent much of my time in Flake's church, and so much so that I was an honorary parishioner. And so today I am glad to address this great distinguished National Assembly. So thank you for inviting me. The African Methodist Episcopal Church really is foundational to American history. All of you form part of an unbroken line of leaders who have dedicated themselves to virtue and good works of a great institution. The AME Church has been a leading advocate for the civil rights of all Americans, and that's powerful history. But today, I think we are here to talk about the future, and I appreciate the opportunity to contribute to the dialogue. Before I do, let me share a little bit more about where I come from and what informs my policy positions. Though I've been very lucky in life, I didn't come from money, sadly. It would have been nice if I did, but I didn't inherit anything. My father was a bookkeeper and never earned more than $6,000 a year in his whole life. He died very young, sadly, while I was still working my way through college. After school, I got a job paying $9,000 a year in New York that I loved. But fortunately or unfortunately, when I was 39 years old, I got laid off, fired. And I didn't know what to do. I was going to do next, but I had an idea, and I started a business from scratch, and I created something that today employs 20,000 people around the world, and including right here in Houston. I give virtually all of my company profits to charity, and that's one way I live the faith and the values that my parents instilled on me. Thank you. I have said 1,000 times, if I screw it up, it is not my parents' fault. I'm running for office to make sure that every student from every neighborhood has the same opportunities that I did. Because the truth is, if I had been black, I wouldn't have had the same opportunities, and my life would have turned out very differently. At the same time, I think it's also true that many black Americans of my generation would have ended up with far more wealth had they been white. And instead, they've had to overcome great odds, and their families started out further behind and were excluded from opportunities in housing and employment, education, and other areas. Those facts are what I talked about last week in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I went to check up on my new friend there, Reverend Robert Turner. He and the did you know him? Yes, he's a really good guy. He and his congregation, the historic Vernon Chapel AME, could not have been more welcoming. But I also went because Tulsa was once home to a thriving, prosperous black community called Greenwood. A history that many of you in this room are aware of, but incidentally, before I went to Tulsa 3 months earlier, I had never heard of it. And I was just shocked at what I heard and decided the next time I wanted to give a speech on economic opportunity, I was going to Tulsa to do it. A century ago, for those of you that don't know, Greenwood was known as the Black Wall Street until 1921. Really had nothing to do with Wall Street, but it was a very wealthy community. And in 1921, a white mob showed up and destroyed it, leaving nothing but ruins and rebels, and killing more than 200 people. It was a horrific tragedy, one of our nation's darkest hours. But like many Americans, I didn't learn about it in school, and it wasn't in any of the history books that I had read. But the fact of the matter is, Greenwood was not an isolated incident. All across this country, for hundreds of years, black Americans faced systematic violence and discrimination, and that robbed them of their lives, their liberty, their pursuit of happiness, and their earnings and wealth. And last month, I was in Montgomery, and I went to the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. It's dedicated to the more than 4,000 African Americans who were lynched in this country. And I would recommend you go. It is incredibly powerful. That history is something that was buried, I think, for far too long. And as we approach Black History Month, we have to confront it because Black history is American history. And we cannot pretend that the injustices suffered for centuries aren't still being felt today, because they are. Today, the typical black family has just 1/10 as much wealth as the typical white family. Think about that, 1/10. And that's a direct result of hundreds of years of systematic theft and exploitation, and I think it's time to address it. So I went to Greenwood, thank you. I went to Greenwood to look back on that harmful legacy, but also to look forward and to speak out about what I would do as president to right the historic wrongs and evils that continue to disadvantage black Americans. Now, as I was in Houston a month ago, I met with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and she doesn't deserve a round of applause if you want to do that. And I gave her my commitment that I will support her bill to create a commission to examine the issue of reparations. But there is no reason not to study remedies, but I will say we can't also wait for the results of a study. The challenge is just too great, and black Americans, I think, have waited long enough. So our team sought out ideas from faith leaders, from business and community leaders, mayors and local officials, members of Congress and academics. And we put together a plan for crafting more wealth and good jobs in black communities. Our plan is comprehensive, it's inclusive, it's ambitious. We call it the Greenwood Initiative, and it has 3 big goals. 1, we will help black families triple their wealth over the next 10 years to an all-time high. 2, we will double the number of black-owned businesses. And 3, we will help 1 million more black families buy a home. Now, talk is cheap, but I know we can reach all of these 3 goals because I know something about creating jobs and building a business and generating wealth. I've done it in the private sector, and I've done it in government, 12 years as the mayor of New York City. As mayor, we created 500,000 new jobs, and we helped lead the country in economic growth, in no small part by supporting small businesses. We also created 175,000 units of affordable housing, and we created programs to help first-time buyers afford them. So these are not just issues that I talk about. These are issues where I actually have a record of getting big things done. Now, other candidates will shake their fists and point fingers, but I've always worked to bring people together and to get results. That's who I am, that's what I've done, and that's the kind of president I would be. Now, if you want to learn more about the Greenwood Initiative, you can visit MikeBloomberg.com. All the details are there, all how we'll achieve our goals. And I think if you read it, you will say, you know, this guy might actually do this. But this morning, I just wanted to be clear about something. Ending economic inequality across all colors is a monumental challenge. But I'm not running for president to do small things. I'm running to do big things that will make a difference. And I've shown in New York City that that's exactly what I do. And I will make closing the racial wealth gap a top priority of our administration. That is the message I'm taking all over America while the other candidates are spending their time in Iowa and New Hampshire. And everywhere I go, I'm making the case against Donald Trump because we've just got to beat him. The future of our country depends on it. Back in 2016 at the National Democratic Convention in Philadelphia, I gave a speech for Hillary Clinton, and I said, I'm a New Yorker, and I know a con when I see one. Well, I'm running to put an end to Trump's con game and start bringing our country back together and getting things done. But I can't do it without you. So I hope you'll share my story with your friends and family. I need your help, and I need your vote. And since you're a people of faith, let me also add, I need your prayers. Because we all believe in a God of love and justice. And I think I can speak for everyone here when I say, we need more of both in America today. I also think that involving faith-based leaders in the planning process, rather than as afterthought at a press conference, makes some sense given their understanding of community needs. On our campaign, the person to reach out to is Reverend Alicia Gordon. You can call her anytime, but she might be a little busy on Sunday mornings. I would suggest some other time. Together, let's put our country back on track. Let's ensure that more black families live the American dream. Let's protect more black communities from the scourge of gun violence. And let's create a future for black America where race and wealth are no longer related. That's the future that I believe we can leave our children and our grandchildren. And that's the future I will work to build as president. Thank you again for having me, and God bless. Enjoy your conference.
Good afternoon. Such a pleasure to be here with you. I'm Senator Nina Turner, and I'm a national co-chair for Senator Bernie Sanders' campaign. And my candidate is in the Senate, being a juror in the trial, in the impeachment trial of President Donald Trump. You know, Minister Malcolm X once said that the future belongs to those who prepare for it today. So it is a beautiful thing to be here today to talk about the future of Black America. I want to give many thanks to the NNPA, the Coalition of Black Civic Participation, the Women's Ministry Society of the AME. I got to confess to you that I am a preacher's kid, so my mama made us go to church 8 days a week. I'm feeling right at home. You know, my candidate does point his fingers, and he does speak loudly. When you have a crisis in America in the way that we have a crisis in America, I was taught a long time ago that if your hair is on fire, you ought to act like your hair is on fire. So yes, Senator Bernard Sanders shows a whole lot of emotion when he is talking about the issues that confront America. And as black people in America, we definitely understand what it means to catch a whole lot of hell. We understand about injustice and structural racism in America. What Senator Bernie Sanders' plan is for America, but particularly for Black America, is to change the material conditions of the workaday people of this nation. Now, Scripture also says that you will know the tree by the fruit that it bears. Not the fruit that it's bearing just because it's running for president, hello somebody, but the fruit that it is bearing for a very long time. And so when it comes to standing up for Black folks in this country, from the time he was a college student to this very moment right now, if you roll the tape, hashtag receipts, no stop and frisk on Senator Bernie Sanders' watch, hello somebody. This is about who is absolutely committed from their work in the past, from what they're standing up for right now, and into the future. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Senator Sanders is committed to transforming and changing the five, what our campaign calls the 5 violences against African American people. That's physical, political, legal, economic, and environmental. When we talk about Medicare for all, that is about having in the United States of America, the wealthiest country on the face of the earth, having health care as a moral right. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about the injustices in this country, and of all of them, he said that the injustices in health care was by and far away the worst. When we talk about canceling student debt, Black women carry the largest amount of student debt in this country. If we cancel student debt, we will shrink the Black-white wealth gap from 12-to-1 to 5-to-1. When we talk about college for all, isn't it vitally important that we can look into the eyes of our babies and say to them that no matter how much money we ever make in life, that if they desire to go to college, they can go to college or go to a trade school. When it comes to economics, Senator Sanders has a plan to have post offices do a lot of the banking services so that our community does not continue to get ripped off by predatory lending, to create grant funding for companies, for communities and companies that have been pillaged by the war on drugs. And we know that the African American community has bore the entire brunt of that. So when it comes to standing up and being a champion, not only will we know the tree by the fruit that it bears, that I truly believe that this is a Micah 6 and 8 moment. That what does the Lord require of us? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. This is not just about people standing up talking about what they're going to do now that they're running for president. It's about the person who has been side by side with working class people all over this country. When we think about Amazon workers and Disney workers by way of example, 400,000 of our closest friends received an increase in their minimum wage of $15 an hour. And who was on the front lines with those workers? It was Senator Bernard Sanders. When we marched on Canton, Mississippi in 2017, standing side by side with Nissan workers in Canton, Mississippi, the majority of those folks, Black workers, as they tried to unionize with the UAW. This is about changing the material conditions for people in this country who've been suffering way too long. And yes, the system is rigged, but I believe that if a multicultural, multiracial, multi-generational group of people come together, that we can make some crooked paths straight. It is time to have somebody who says that Wall Street, I'm coming for your greed. The pharmaceutical industry, I'm coming for your greed. The fossil fuel industry, I'm coming for your greed. These are things that we need to have total transcendence in this country. And so I want you to roll the tape, check the receipts, and compare each candidate's record, not just by the epiphany that they have now that they're running, not people who are trying to buy the election, but people who are willing to be full-fledged public servants. And I guarantee you, you will see that Senator Bernie Sanders is that servant. In my closing, as a Black woman in America, if I might just say, Congresswoman, putting that in the Southern Ladies Bank and Trust, is that all right? Your very own Congresswoman Barbara Jordan said these words: what the people want is simple. They want an America as good as its promise. That is what Black America has deserved generation after generation, an America as good as its promise. So when we talk about health care, canceling student debt, creating jobs, creating opportunities, and going toe-to-toe with structural racism in this country, this is about creating an America as good as its promise. And there is only one candidate that has taken $0 from billionaires in this country. There's only one candidate that has said to them, I am coming for your greed. Judge me by my haters. I will list them all on my website. There is only one candidate that is willing, ready, and able to stand in the ready position for the marginalized, the despised, the dispressed in this nation, and that is Senator Bernard Sanders. I want to close with my grandmama's words, if I might. My grandmother hailed from the South. She could not read or write, but sister, she could count her money. And she kept her money in the Southern Ladies Bank and Trust. When I asked my grandmother, what does it take to be successful in life? She said, my dear granddaughter, all you need are the three bones: the wishbone, the jawbone, and the backbone. She said the wishbone is for hoping and praying, because hope is the motivator, but the dream is the driver. The jawbone is for lifting your voice and speaking truth to power. You see, sisters and brothers, titles are really good. They get your phone calls returned. Titles are good. They get you in the room. Titles are good, but purpose is better. And we need more purpose-driven people from all walks of life who are willing to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, who's willing to stand up. I heard one of the lieutenant governors up here say that Jesus was a radical. Whose side do you think that Jesus would be on? He would be on the side of the people who've been suffering in this nation time and time again, and to speak that kind of truth to power. But lastly, my grandmother said the most important bone of them all, the supercalifragilisticexpialidocious bone, is the backbone, because the backbone will keep us standing through all of our trials and our tribulations. And in this life, sisters and brothers, we're going to go through some stuff, but we can't have a testimony without a test. And we are being tested to determine whether we have conviction enough, courage enough to do what is right in our time, even if it causes us some discomfort, because our mission is so high we can't get over it. Our mission is so low we can't get under it. And our mission is so wide we cannot get around it. So if you are ready for change, Texas, if you are ready for change, America, I guarantee you toe-to-toe that Senator Bernard Sanders is that champion, building a movement of people who are on the move for justice. God bless you.